My name is Martha Johnson. I'm 67 years old, and what I'm about to tell you happened at my son's wedding 6 months ago. I was sitting at the reception table, enjoying the celebration, when my 8-year-old grandson, Ethan, suddenly appeared beside me, his face serious and eyes wide with worry. "Grandma," he whispered, tugging at my sleeve, "there's a box under the table. You need to open it." At first, I thought it was just another of his little games, but the urgency in his voice made me look. There it was, a small wooden box with intricate carvings, something I'd never seen before. When I opened it that evening, I discovered a secret that would unravel decades of lies and change our family forever. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far my story has reached. This is a story about betrayal, but also about finding truth when you least expect it. The wedding venue was beautiful, a renovated historic barn with exposed wooden beams draped with twinkling lights and white flowers. The tables were set with ivory linens and simple centerpieces of wildflowers. My son Robert looked so handsome in his navy suit, and his bride Vanessa was radiant in her elegant white gown. After 15 years as a widower, Robert had finally found someone who made him smile again. I watched them during their first dance, how they gazed at each other with such tenderness. After losing my husband James to cancer 12 years ago, I understood the value of finding love again. Though I never remarried, seeing my son happy warmed my heart in ways I can't describe. The guests were laughing and dancing, the champagne was flowing, and I sat at my table watching it all with the contentment that comes from seeing your family celebrate. Ethan, my grandson, had been running around with the other children earlier, but now he seemed subdued as he took his seat beside me. I remember those early days when Robert's first wife, Catherine, was still with us. She was a gentle soul with a laugh that could light up a room. We would gather at their small house every Sunday for dinner. Catherine would cook her famous pot roast while I brought homemade apple pie. We'd sit around their wooden table talking about everything and nothing, with little Ethan babbling in his high chair. "Mom," Robert would say with that boyish smile of his, "nobody makes pie like you do." Catherine would agree, her eyes crinkling at the corners when she smiled. Those Sunday dinners became the anchor of our weeks. James would tell stories about his days as a high school football coach, making everyone laugh with his impressions of teenage boys trying to impress the girls in the stands. Catherine would share news about her kindergarten students and the funny things they said. It was simple, ordinary family time. But looking back, I realize how precious those moments were. Then came that terrible night 9. Years ago. Robert called me at 2 a.m., his voice broken in a way I'd never heard before. There had been an accident. A drunk driver had crossed the center line. Catherine died at the scene. In an instant, our family was shattered. Robert became a single father to a confused, heartbroken 4-year-old boy, and I watched my son retreat into himself, a shell of the man he once was. "Mom," he said to me a week after the funeral, "I don't know how to do this without her." We were sitting on his back porch, Ethan finally asleep after days of asking when his mommy was coming home. I took Robert's hand, feeling how cold his fingers were despite the summer evening. "One day at a time," I told him. "That's all any of us can do." I never imagined those days would turn into years, and that eventually my son would find the strength to love again. After Catherine died, I practically moved into Robert and Ethan's house. Robert was drowning in grief, barely able to function. He would go to work at his accounting firm, come home, and stare at the wall for hours. So I stepped in. I was 58 then, still working part-time as a nurse, but I rearranged my schedule to be there for them. I remember the day I made the decision to sell my house. It had been 6 months since Catherine's death, and Robert was still struggling. I sat at my kitchen table looking at the home James and I had shared for 30 years. All those memories, all that history in every corner. But my family needed me more than I needed those walls. When I told Robert I was selling my house to move closer, he protested. "Mom, you can't do that." "Dad built that house." I simply replied, "Your father would understand." Family comes first. The $240,000 I got from selling our home allowed me to buy a small condo just 10 minutes from Robert's house. I used the remaining $75,000 to set up a college fund for Ethan. It wasn't even a question in my mind, that's what grandmothers do. Every morning, I would arrive at their house by 6:30 a.m. to get Ethan ready for school while Robert got himself together for work. I packed lunches, helped with homework, attended school events, and tried to create some stability for my grandson. There were nights when Ethan would wake up crying for his mother, and I would hold him until he fell back asleep, my own tears mixing with his. When Robert's car broke down, I didn't hesitate to give him $15,000 from my retirement savings to buy a reliable vehicle. "You need to get to work, and Ethan needs to get to school," I said when he tried to refuse. "We'll call it an early inheritance." There was the time Robert's company went through layoffs, and he was without work for nearly 7 months. I covered the $2,100 monthly mortgage payments without a second thought. "Pay me back when you can," I told him, knowing he probably never would. That was fine by me. When Ethan needed braces, I wrote a check for $5,800 to the orthodontist. When the roof leaked, I paid the $12,000 for repairs. Each time, Robert would protest, and each time, I would say the same thing. This is what family does. I don't say all this to boast about my sacrifices. I say it because I want you to understand how much I loved my son and grandson, how much I would have did do, to ensure their happiness and security, which is why what happened next was all the more painful. About 3 years ago, Robert met Vanessa at a work conference. She was beautiful, successful, and charming, a marketing executive with a confident smile and designer clothes. The first time Robert brought her to dinner at my condo, I was thrilled to see him happy again. But there was something in the way she looked around my modest home, a fleeting expression of distaste quickly masked with a smile. "Your place is so cozy," she said, emphasizing the word in a way that made it clear she meant small. I brushed it off, not wanting to see anything negative in the woman bringing joy back to my son's life. Ethan was reserved around her from the beginning. At first, I thought it was natural. He'd been the center of his father's world for so long. But as months passed, I noticed how he would become quieter when she entered the room, how he stopped sharing stories about school when she was present. "What do you think of Vanessa?" I asked him one day when I was driving him home from baseball practice. He stared out the window for a long moment before answering. "She's nice to Dad," he finally said, in a careful way that told me he was choosing his words. The first real warning came during Thanksgiving dinner last year. Robert and Vanessa had been dating for about a year and a half by then. I had spent all day cooking: turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, 3 different pies, the works. When we sat down to eat, Vanessa looked at the spread and said, "Oh, this is all so traditional. We usually do a catered Thanksgiving at my parents'. They bring in a chef who does an amazing fusion menu." Robert quickly jumped in. "This looks incredible, Mom." "Nobody cooks like you do." I saw the flash of annoyance cross Vanessa's face, quickly replaced by a tight smile. Later, as I was serving pie, I overheard her in the kitchen on her phone. God, it's like stepping back in time. Everything is so old-fashioned. Even the china is probably from the 80s. She laughed softly. "I know, right? But his mother is sweet, in that simple way." I stood frozen in the hallway, dessert plates in my hands, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the November weather. Then came Ethan's birthday in February. I had always made him a homemade cake, chocolate with buttercream frosting, his favorite. But when I arrived with it, Vanessa said, "Oh, we already ordered a professional cake. It's in the fridge." She showed me an elaborate superhero-themed creation that must have cost at least $150. My simple homemade cake was set aside, untouched. I watched Ethan's face fall when he saw my cake pushed to the corner of the table. Later, when most guests had left, I found him in the kitchen, secretly eating a slice of my cake. "This one tastes like love, Grandma," he said, and my heart both swelled and broke. The most troubling incident happened just 2 months before the wedding. I'd come over to help Ethan with a science project. Vanessa came home early from work, clearly annoyed to find me there. "Martha, we really need to establish some boundaries," she said when Robert wasn't in the room. "You can't just be here all the time. We're going to be a family unit soon, and Ethan needs to adjust to our new normal." I was stunned. "I'm just helping with homework," I said. "That's our job now," she replied, her tone making it clear the conversation was over. That night, Ethan called me on his dad's old phone that he used for games. "Grandma," he whispered, "Vanessa said you shouldn't come over so much anymore, but I don't want you to stay away." His voice trembled. "She told Dad that you're too involved in our lives." I tried to reassure him, but inside I felt a growing unease. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly what. As the wedding approached, I found myself invited to fewer family dinners. My offers to help with wedding planning were politely declined. Robert started calling less, and when we did talk, he seemed rushed, distracted. I told myself it was just the stress of planning a wedding. I told myself Vanessa was just establishing her role in the family. I told myself that change is hard for everyone. But deep down, I knew something was shifting in our family, and not for the better. The morning of my son's wedding dawned bright and clear. I arrived early at the venue to help with any last-minute details, but Vanessa's friends, all perfectly coiffed women in matching robes, informed me that everything was under control. I was directed to a small side room where I could relax until the ceremony. It felt like I was being tucked away out of sight. The ceremony itself was beautiful, if impersonal. The vows were standard, with none of the personal touches that had made Robert and Catherine's wedding so memorable. I sat in the front row, smiling through tears as my son began his new life. At the reception, I was seated at a table far from the main wedding party. Not at the family table, but at table 12, with some distant cousins of Vanessa's whom I'd never met. When I asked the wedding planner about it, she simply said, "These are the seating arrangements Ms. Vanessa approved." I settled into my seat, determined to enjoy the celebration despite feeling sidelined. That's when Ethan appeared, slipping into the empty chair beside me. His little face was serious beneath his neatly combed hair. "Grandma," he whispered, leaning close, "I need to tell you something important." "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked, straightening his little bow tie. He glanced around nervously before continuing. "Vanessa doesn't want you to have your house back." I stared at him confused. "What do you mean, Ethan?" "What house?" "Your old house. The one you sold to help us. I heard her talking to Dad. She said they should never give it back to you even though Dad promised." My mind raced. Robert had promised? This was the first I'd heard of any such thing. Yes, I had sold my home to help them, but I never expected to get it back. It had been sold to strangers years ago. "Are you sure that's what you heard?" I asked gently. Ethan nodded vigorously. "And there's more, Grandma. There's a box under the table. You need to open it." "What box?" I asked, but Ethan was already bending down, reaching beneath the white tablecloth. He emerged with a small wooden box about the size of a thick novel. It was made of dark wood with intricate carvings, vines and leaves intertwined around the edges. "Where did this come from?" I asked, taking it from him. "I found it in Dad's office last week. It has your name on the bottom, see?" He turned the box over to reveal my name, Martha, burned into the wood. "I hid it here earlier. I think it's important. I recognize the box now. James had made it for me for our 20th anniversary, his skilled hands carving each detail with love. I had kept special mementos in it, letters, small keepsakes, but I thought I had lost it in the move when I sold our house. Why would Robert have it? And why had he never mentioned finding it? "You need to open it, Grandma," Ethan insisted, his young voice surprisingly firm. "Now." With slightly trembling hands, I opened the wooden box. Inside was a collection of documents, neatly folded. On top was an envelope with my name written in Robert's handwriting. I opened it and began to read the letter inside. "Mom, if you're reading this, then you've found the box I've been keeping for safekeeping. There's so much I need to tell you, so much I should have said years ago. After Dad died, you gave up everything for us. Your home, your savings, your retirement, all to keep me and Ethan afloat. What you don't know is that Dad left a separate insurance policy worth $400,000 that was supposed to go directly to you. I was the executor, and I made a terrible decision. I kept it from you. We were drowning in debt after Catherine died, and I convinced myself it was what Dad would have wanted, for his grandson to be taken care of. I told myself I would pay you back someday. The policy money is how I put a down payment on the new house last year, the house that should rightfully be half yours. I've been trying to find the courage to tell you to make it right. I set up an account in your name with the remaining funds, $215,000, and the deed to the house lists you as 50% owner. All the documents are in this box. But now Vanessa is pressuring me to remove your name from the deed before the wedding. She doesn't want our financial future tied to your mother. Those were her words. I don't know what to do. Please forgive me. Robert. I felt the blood drain from my face as I read the letter again, trying to comprehend what it was telling me. My son had hidden my husband's insurance money from me. For years, I had struggled to make ends meet on my nurse's pension, depleting my own savings to help them, and all that time. With shaking hands, I looked through the other papers in the box. There was indeed a copy of a life insurance policy in James's name, with me listed as the beneficiary. A bank statement showed an account in my name with $215,000, money I never knew existed, and there was a property deed for Robert's new house, the one he and Vanessa had bought last year, with my name listed as co-owner. But there was also a new deed application, already filled out, that would remove my name completely. It was dated 2 weeks ago and signed by Robert, just needing to be filed. As I sat there stunned, another document caught my eye. It was an email printout from Vanessa to someone named Gerald Spencer at a law firm. Gerald, as discussed, we need to move forward with removing Martha Johnson as co-owner on the property before the wedding. Robert is hesitant, but I've nearly convinced him. Once we're married, I want to make sure she has no legal claim to our home or any of our assets. Please also advise on how to handle the joint account. Can we transfer those funds after the wedding without her signature? Let's discuss the best approach to make this happen quietly. Regards, Vanessa. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. 9 years. For 9 years, my son had kept this secret while watching me struggle, while accepting my help, while letting me deplete my own security for his benefit. And now his new wife was actively working to cut me out completely. I looked up to find Ethan watching me anxiously. "Are you mad, Grandma?" he asked in a small voice. "No, sweetheart," I said automatically, though I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Shock, certainly. Betrayal. A deep, aching disappointment. "Why did you bring me this box?" "Because Vanessa was looking for it," he said. "I heard her telling Dad they needed to take care of those papers before you could find them. She said they needed to protect their future. It didn't sound right, out of the mouths of babes. My 8-year-old grandson had more moral clarity than my adult son." "Thank you for showing me, Ethan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This was very brave of you." "What are you going to do?" he asked, his eyes wide. That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do with this devastating knowledge on my son's wedding day? I needed time to think, to process what I'd discovered. I excused myself from the table, telling Ethan I needed a moment alone, and walked outside to the venue's garden. The evening air was cool, a stark contrast to the heat building inside me. I found a bench partially hidden by flowering bushes and sat down, the wooden box clutched in my hands. I needed to look through everything again, more carefully this time. Among the papers was a small notebook in my son's handwriting. It appeared to be a record of my financial contributions to him over the years. January 2015. Mom's house sold $240,000. She gave me $165,000 for mortgage payments and to pay off Catherine's medical bills. April 2015. Mom paid $12,000 for roof repair September 2016. Mom gave $15,000 for new car. February 2017 to September 2017. Mom covered mortgage during layoff. $14,700. December 2017. Mom paid $5,800 for Ethan's braces. The list went on and on, detailing every penny I had given them over the years. Each entry ended with the same note, to be repaid from Dad's insurance money. But that repayment had never come. Instead, there were more recent entries. March 2024. Bought new house with Dad's insurance money as down payment, $185,000, April 2024. Transferred remaining insurance money to joint account with Mom's name, $215,000, June 2024. Vanessa thinks we should remove Mom's name from deed and account July 2024. Started paperwork to change deed. The last entry was from just 2 weeks ago. Vanessa found legal way to transfer joint account funds after wedding. Meeting with her lawyer next week. There were also bank statements showing the account in my name had been accessed multiple times, with withdrawals for home improvements and investment opportunities. Money that was supposedly set aside for me, being used without my knowledge or consent. I found a letter from James's insurance company dated 3 months after his death, confirming the payout of $400,000 to Robert as executor, with instructions to transfer it to me as the beneficiary. My head was spinning. How could Robert have done this? My son, who I had raised to be honest and honorable. The boy who once returned a wallet he'd found with $50 inside. The young man who had stood by Catherine's side through her illness with such steadfast love. And now, there was Vanessa, actively plotting to erase what little financial security I had left, the house I had paid to maintain for years, the money that was rightfully mine from my husband's careful planning. As I sat there absorbing it all, I heard voices approaching. I shrank back behind the bush, not ready to face anyone yet. The papers are missing Robert. Vanessa's voice, tense and angry. I can't find them anywhere in your office. Maybe that's a sign, my son replied, his voice weary. Maybe we shouldn't do this. Don't be ridiculous, we agreed. Your mother doesn't need that money, and we do if we want to start our family right. She's old, Robert. She has her pension. We have our whole lives ahead of us. She's my mother, Vanessa. She gave up everything for us, and now it's time for her to let you go. That's what mothers do. They raise their children and then step aside. Martha needs to understand that our family, you, me, and Ethan, comes first now. Their voices faded as they walked farther away, but their words remained, cutting like knives. She's old. She doesn't need that money. Time for her to step aside. I sat there, the wooden box on my lap, feeling simultaneously invisible and exposed. The wound of betrayal was fresh and raw, but alongside the pain, something else was growing. Resolve, a determination to not be pushed aside, to not have my sacrifices forgotten or dismissed. With newfound clarity, I gathered the papers back into the box. I knew what I needed to do. I returned to the reception, the wooden box tucked safely in my purse. The celebration was in full swing, with dinner being served and champagne flowing freely. Robert and Vanessa were at the head table, smiling and accepting congratulations. They looked happy, unaware of the storm brewing. I made my way back to table 12, where Ethan was picking at his chicken fingers. His face brightened when he saw me. "You came back," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Of course I did." "I wouldn't leave without saying goodbye to my favorite grandson," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. As the evening progressed, I noticed how Vanessa kept Robert close, her hand possessively on his arm. Whenever he started to walk in my direction, she would pull him back, whisper something in his ear, or find someone else for him to talk to. It was subtle, but deliberate. She was keeping us apart. When it came time for toasts, the best man and maid of honor spoke, followed by Vanessa's father. Then the MC announced, "And now, a few words from the mother of the groom." I stood, surprised. No one had told me I would be expected to speak. I hadn't prepared anything. As I made my way to the microphone, I saw Vanessa's satisfied smirk. She had planned this, putting me on the spot, hoping I would embarrass myself or decline. Taking the microphone, I looked out at the sea of faces, most of them strangers to me. I took a deep breath. For those who don't know me, I'm Martha, Robert's mother. When Robert was 5 years old, he came home from kindergarten with a drawing of our family. "That's Dad," he said, pointing to a tall stick figure. "That's you," pointing to a figure with curly hair. "And that's me in the middle." Then he added something I've never forgotten. "I drew us all holding hands because we keep each other safe." I paused, looking directly at my son, whose eyes were fixed on me with an expression of growing discomfort. Family is about keeping each other safe. It's about sacrificing for each other when times are hard. It's about honesty and trust. I saw Robert shift in his seat, his face paling. "I wish you both a marriage built on those values," I concluded, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. "Congratulations!" I handed the microphone back and returned to my seat amid polite applause. As I walked past the head table, Vanessa grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "What was that supposed to mean?" she hissed, her smile never wavering for the benefit of onlookers. "Just sharing motherly wisdom," I replied, gently but firmly removing her hand from my arm. As the evening wore on, the situation grew increasingly tense. During the cake cutting, Vanessa accidentally excluded me from the family photos. When it came time for the mother-son dance, the DJ announced a change in program and skipped directly to the father-daughter dance instead. The final straw came when I overheard Vanessa speaking to her mother near the restrooms. "We're going to have to accelerate the plan," she was saying. "That old bat knows something. I saw her with some kind of box earlier." "Just handle it quickly," her mother replied. "Once you're back from the honeymoon, have Robert tell her they're moving farther away. Distance makes these things easier. Trust me, in 6 months she'll be lucky if she gets a Christmas card. I'm not having her interfere with our lives the way she did with Robert, and what's her name?" "Catherine," I said, stepping into view. Her name was Catherine, and she was worth 10 of you. Vanessa's face contorted with anger for a split second before she composed herself. "Martha!" "We were just discussing the honeymoon plans." "No, you weren't," I said calmly. "You were discussing how to remove me from your lives. After you finished removing me from my house and my bank account." Her face went blank with shock, then quickly hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're clearly confused. Maybe it's time for you to go home. You seem tired." The condescension in her voice, the dismissive way she spoke to me as if I were a child or an invalid, it was the last straw. "I'm not confused, Vanessa. And I'm not going anywhere until I've spoken to my son." I found Robert near the bar, laughing with a group of his friends. When he saw me approaching with such determination, his smile faded. "Mom? Is everything okay? We need to talk, Robert. Now." My voice was firm but controlled. "Can it wait? We're about to cut the cake." "No, it can't wait." 9 years is long enough. His face drained of color as understanding dawned. He excused himself from his friends and followed me to a quiet corner of the venue. I could see Vanessa watching us from across the room, her eyes narrow with suspicion. Once we were alone, I opened my purse and took out the wooden box. Ethan found this. He thought I should see what was inside. Robert stared at the box, recognition and then dread washing over his face. "Mom, I can explain." "Explain what, Robert?" "How you hid your father's insurance policy from me? How you watched me drain my savings to help? You while you were sitting on $400,000 that was meant for me? Or maybe you'd like to explain this." I pulled out the email from Vanessa to her lawyer. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was in the box, along with the new deed that would remove my name from the house I've been paying for, the house that should be half mine." "It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," I interrupted, my voice finally breaking. "It looks like betrayal, Robert. From my own son." People nearby were starting to notice our intense conversation. Vanessa was making her way toward us, her bridal gown swishing as she moved purposefully across the room. "I was going to tell you," Robert said desperately. "I've been trying to find the right time." "The right time was 9 years ago," I said. "The right time was before I sold my house. The right time was before I spent my retirement savings helping you. There is no right time for what you've done." Vanessa arrived, placing herself between me and Robert. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice syrupy sweet but her eyes cold. "Yes, there is," I said, looking past her to my son. "The problem is that I raised my son to be an honest man, and somewhere along the way, he forgot that." "Whatever she's upset about, we can discuss it after the honeymoon," Vanessa said to Robert, not even addressing me directly. "The guests are waiting for us." "No," I said firmly. "This ends now." "Robert, I found the letter you wrote me. I know you've been feeling guilty. I know you wanted to make things right. But I nodded toward Vanessa, "she convinced you to hide it all again, didn't she? To cut me out completely." Vanessa's practiced smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about." I held up her email. "Your own words, Vanessa. Your plans to take my name off the deed, to transfer the funds from the joint account after the wedding. Did you think I would never find out? That I would just fade away like a convenient old lady in a retirement home somewhere?" A small crowd had gathered now. Whispers rippled through the guests. Ethan had appeared at my side, his small hand slipping into mine in silent support. "You're making a scene," Vanessa hissed. "This is our wedding day." "And this is my life," I replied, my voice rising. "My life that you're trying to steal. The money my husband left to take care of me. The home I helped pay for. The son I raised." Robert looked stricken, his eyes darting between me and his new wife. "Vanessa, is this true? Did you send this email?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her perfect features. "I was just protecting our future. Your mother doesn't need—" "Stop telling me what I need," I said, loud enough now that the music seemed to dim. "I am not some helpless old woman to be managed and dismissed. I am Martha Johnson. I raised this man. I sacrificed everything for him and my grandson, and I will not be pushed aside." The room had gone quiet. All eyes were on us. The mother of the groom confronting the bride and groom in the middle of their wedding reception. I hadn't wanted it to happen this way, but perhaps it was fitting that the truth came out in front of witnesses. "Mom," Robert said, his voice cracking, "I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was going to fix it, I swear." "When?" I asked. "After you let her remove my name from the deed? After you transferred my money without my knowledge? When exactly were you planning to fix this?" He had no answer. "Grandma's right," Ethan said suddenly, his clear child's voice cutting through the tension. "Dad, you always say honesty is the most important thing. You said lies hurt people, and this is a really big lie. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed." Robert looked at his son, then at me, then finally at Vanessa. Something shifted in his expression, a hardening, a resolve I hadn't seen in years. "The boy is right," he said. This ends now." The next few minutes were chaos. Vanessa tried to pull Robert away, but he stood firm. Guests murmured and whispered. The wedding planner hovered nearby, clearly unsure whether to intervene. "I need everyone's attention," Robert said loudly, stepping toward the center of the room. The DJ, sensing something important was happening, lowered the music. Robert stood there in his wedding suit, looking both devastated and determined. "I owe my mother an apology," he began, "and I owe all of you the truth." Despite Vanessa's attempts to stop him, Robert proceeded to explain everything: how my husband James had left an insurance policy for me, how Robert had kept it from me while accepting my financial help for years, how he had put my name on the new house deed as a partial attempt to make amends, and how there were plans to remove it. My mother sold her home, depleted her savings, and put her own retirement at risk to help me and my son after my first wife died, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind his words. And all that time, I had funds that rightfully belonged to her. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice clinking in the glasses. Vanessa stood frozen, her perfect wedding clearly crumbling around her. "Today was supposed to be a new beginning," Robert continued, "but I can't start a marriage with this lie between us. I can't move forward until I make this right." He turned to me, his voice breaking. "Mom, I am so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I promise I will make this right." From her spot several feet away, Vanessa finally found her voice. "Robert, what are you doing?" she demanded, her composed facade cracking. "This is our wedding day. You're embarrassing us in front of everyone." "No, Vanessa," he replied firmly. "What's embarrassing is what we were planning to do to my mother. What's embarrassing is that I let you convince me it was okay." Vanessa's mother rushed to her side, whispering urgently in her ear, but Vanessa brushed her away. "Fine," she said coldly. "If that's how you feel, maybe we need to reconsider this whole marriage." Robert looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe we do." A collective gasp went through the room. The perfect wedding was unraveling spectacularly. "Let's take this somewhere private," Robert's best man suggested, trying to salvage the situation. "No," I said, stepping forward. "No more secrets. No more private discussions where decisions about my life are made without me." I looked around at the gathered guests, many of whom looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry that this day has turned out this way. Truly I am, but sometimes the truth needs to come out, even when the timing isn't convenient." Ethan still held my hand, squeezing it in silent support. The strength of this small child amazed me. "For the record," I continued, addressing the room, "I don't want to ruin anyone's happiness. I just want what's rightfully mine, the security my husband tried to provide for me before he died." Robert nodded, then turned to address the stunned wedding guests. "Please enjoy the rest of the evening. The food, the drinks, the dancing, it's all paid for. My mother and I need some time to talk." Robert led me to a small private room off the main reception hall. Ethan insisted on coming with us, refusing to leave my side. Once we were alone, Robert collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. "I don't even know where to begin," he said, his voice hollow. "The beginning would be good," I replied, sitting across from him, the wooden box between us on the table. For the next hour, as the sounds of the reception continued dimly in the background, my son confessed everything. How after James died and the insurance money came, he had been drowning in Catherine's medical bills. How he convinced himself it was just a temporary loan from my portion. How 1 year turned into 2, then 5, then 9. "I kept telling myself I would pay you back," he said. "That's why I've documented everything you've given us over the years." I really was planning to make it right. "And what changed?" I asked. "When did making it right turn into removing my name from the deed and transferring money without my knowledge?" Robert's eyes dropped to the floor. "Vanessa found out about the arrangement a few months ago. She said it wasn't prudent." to have your name on our assets, that it could complicate things if we wanted to sell or if something happened to you." "If I died, you mean?" I said bluntly. He nodded miserably. "She said it was standard financial planning, that everyone does it, that you wouldn't mind because you'd want us to be secure." "And you believed that? That I wouldn't mind being lied to and stolen from?" "I didn't want to believe it was wrong," he admitted, "because that would mean I'd been wrong for 9 years, and I couldn't face that." Ethan, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "Dad, remember when I broke Mrs. Peterson's window with my baseball and I didn't tell her because I was scared? And you said that when you make a mistake, hiding it only makes it worse?" Robert looked at his son, a sad smile crossing his face. "When did you get so wise, buddy?" "I learned it from you," Ethan replied simply. "Before." The word hung in the air. Before Vanessa. Before the lies became too big to manage. Before money and status became more important than honesty and family. "What happens now?" I asked, breaking the silence. "Now I fix this," Robert said with new resolve. "First thing Monday, we go to the bank together. We put the remaining insurance money in an account in your name only. We amend the house deed to reflect your proper share. Actually, more than half, considering how much you've contributed over the years." "And Vanessa?" Robert sighed deeply. "I don't know. What I do know is that I won't let anyone push my mother aside or take advantage of her ever again, not even my wife." The word seemed to stick his throat. "I think I'd like to go home now," I said, suddenly feeling very tired. "It's been quite an evening." Robert nodded. "Let me drive you." "What about your wedding reception?" I asked. "I think it's safe to say the wedding is on hold," he replied grimly. As we walked back into the reception area, the party was still going on, though with a distinctly awkward atmosphere. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen, but her parents gave us cold stares as we passed. Before we left, Ethan ran back to our table and returned with a single white rose from the centerpiece. He handed it to me with a solemn face. "This is for you, Grandma, because you're brave." In that moment, despite everything, I felt a surge of hope. If my grandson could see courage in standing up for oneself, then perhaps something good would come from this painful day after all. The 6 months following Robert's wedding day were difficult, but healing. True to his word, Robert came to my condo the very next Monday, and we went together to the bank. The remaining insurance money, $215,000, was transferred to an account in my name only. We also met with an attorney who drew up a new deed for the house, listing me as the primary owner, 60%, and Robert as a secondary owner, 40%. Vanessa, as you might expect, was furious. She and Robert attempted counseling for a few weeks, but the damage was done. Their marriage, less than a day old, couldn't survive the revelations and betrayals of their wedding day. The annulment was finalized within 2 months. The day the annulment became official, Robert came to my condo with Ethan and a stack of papers. "What's all this?" I asked as they sat at my small kitchen table. "Documentation," Robert replied, spreading out the papers. "Every penny you've given us over the years, with interest calculated at current rates. I've set up a repayment plan." He pushed a detailed spreadsheet toward me. "I can't undo what I did, Mom, but I can try to make it right going forward." I looked at the meticulous calculations, the payment schedule stretching years into the future. It was unnecessary. I didn't need or want him to repay everything, but I understood that this was part of his healing, his atonement. "There's something else," Robert continued, pulling out another document. "I've amended my will. If anything happens to me, everything goes to Ethan in a trust, with you as the trustee until he's 25. No one will ever be able to push you aside again." Tears welled in my eyes. These gestures wouldn't erase the years of deception, but they were concrete steps toward rebuilding trust. As summer turned to fall and then winter, our family slowly began to heal. Robert sold the new house, too many bad memories, and bought a smaller place just 10 minutes from my condo. He returned to the man I had raised him to be, honest, caring, and with a renewed appreciation for family. Ethan flourished with the renewed harmony between his father and grandmother. His grades improved, and he joined a local baseball team where Robert served as assistant coach. The shadows that had hung over him lifted, and his laughter returned, the greatest gift of all. As for me, I discovered that financial security brought a freedom I had almost forgotten. I renovated my small condo, replacing the worn carpet with hardwood floors and updating the kitchen. I joined a book club and a walking group, making new friends who had nothing to do with my identity as Robert's mother or Ethan's grandmother. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee with a kind widower named Harold who lived in my complex. It felt good to be seen as a woman, not just a mother or grandmother or retiree. On a crisp Saturday in February, exactly 1 year after Ethan's birthday when Vanessa had pushed aside my homemade cake, I invited Robert and Ethan over for dinner. As we sat around my small dining table, eating pot roast that reminded us all of Sunday dinners long ago, I realized we had come full circle. "I have something for you," Robert said after dinner, placing a familiar wooden box on the table. "I already have this," I said, puzzled. It was the carved box James had made, the one that had contained all the damning documents. "Look inside," Robert urged. I opened the box to find it had been emptied of all the painful evidence and refilled with old family photographs. James and me on our wedding day, Robert as a toddler, Catherine holding newborn Ethan, and dozens more memories captured in time. "I thought it was time this box held something better than secrets and lies," Robert said quietly. "Something worth keeping." Ethan reached over and picked up a photo of himself as a baby with Catherine. "Tell me about my mom," he said, a request he'd been making more frequently lately. As I began sharing stories of Catherine, her kindness, her laugh, her love for both Robert and Ethan, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Our family had been broken, not once, but twice. First by death, which we could not control, and then by deception, which we could. The healing from this second breaking had been painful but necessary. The wooden box sat open on the table, filled now with memories rather than betrayals. It seemed a fitting symbol for our family's journey. Damaged but not destroyed, and stronger in the repaired places. Later that evening, as Robert and Ethan prepared to leave, my son hugged me tightly. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For not giving up on me. For giving me the chance to be better. For showing Ethan what integrity looks like." I squeezed him back, feeling the strong shoulders of the man who had once been my little boy. "That's what family does," I said simply. "We keep each other safe." As I watched them walk to their car, Ethan turning to wave one more time before climbing in, I thought about how close we had come to losing each other, how a small wooden box and a brave little boy had changed everything. Sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes it comes at the worst possible time, like in the middle of a wedding reception. But without truth, there can be no real love, no real family, no real security. If you're watching this, if you've stayed with my story until the end, I want you to know that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. It's never too late to insist on the truth. It's never too late to rebuild what's broken. And if you ever find yourself sitting at a table and someone tells you there's a box underneath that you need to open, take a deep breath and look. The truth inside might change your life. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you watching from? What would you have done in my situation? Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories about family, truth, and finding strength when you least expect it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember that you deserve respect at any age, and that standing up for yourself is never wrong, even when it's difficult. With love and respect, Martha.